During my hospital stay, my parents sold my $19,000 engagement ring to fund my brother's wild party. Please listen to my story, and if it connects with you, I'd be so grateful if you could show some support by liking, subscribing, and sharing with the people you love. My name is Melanie Parker. I'm 26 years old, and for the most part, I've always lived a quiet, simple life. I work hard, I pay my own bills, and I thought I had a family who would stand by me when I needed them. I'm engaged to Jacob Hayes, the most patient and loving man I've ever known. We don't live in luxury, but we are happy together, and that always felt like enough. Jacob spent years saving up for my engagement ring. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was a symbol of his love, his commitment, and all the sacrifices he made so we could build a future together. The ring was worth $19,000, but to me it was priceless. Every time I looked at it, I saw the years of late nights and early mornings Jacob had worked, the times he put me before himself, and the dream of the life we were about to start. I never thought I'd have to leave that ring behind, but life has a way of throwing curveballs. One evening, I doubled over in pain. At first, I thought it was something I ate, but the pain grew sharper, unbearable. Jacob rushed me to the hospital, and within hours, doctors confirmed I needed emergency surgery for appendicitis. Everything happened so fast. I didn't have time to think about much, just that I had to hand over my life into the care of people in white coats and trust that I'd come out okay. Jacob stayed by my side almost every minute, holding my hand before surgery and waiting outside the operating room door. He was my anchor when I felt like I might drift away. My parents visited, too, though not nearly as much as Jacob. They seemed more concerned about practical things, my apartment, my belongings, than about how scared I felt lying in that hospital bed. At one point, my mom, Karen, even said, "Don't worry, Melanie, we'll look after everything at your place. You just focus on getting better." I remember nodding, feeling relieved for a second, because I thought maybe they were finally stepping up for me. I couldn't have known what was waiting on the other side of those hospital doors. While I was lying in that bed, trying to heal, I believed my family was protecting what was mine. I believed they had my best interests at heart. I was wrong. The one thing I trusted them with, the one thing that meant the world to me, was gone. I didn't know it yet, but betrayal was already in motion, and it was about to change the way I saw my family forever. My name is Melanie Parker, and to understand why what happened with my ring cut me so deeply, you need to know a little about my family. My parents, Karen and David Parker, have always been the type who wanted to be seen as generous and caring, but in reality, their generosity seemed to flow in only one direction, toward my younger brother, Brandon. Brandon is 23, 3 years younger than me, and for as long as I can remember, he's been the golden child. He never faced the same expectations I did. While I was the one expected to take on responsibility, Brandon was excused, forgiven, or even praised for things that would have gotten me into serious trouble. He's reckless, spoiled, and always seems to have someone cleaning up his messes. That someone was almost always my parents. I, on the other hand, grew up learning quickly that if I wanted something, I had to find a way to earn it myself. I paid my way through college, working long hours and juggling multiple jobs, while Brandon had his tuition covered by my parents without ever lifting a finger. When I asked for a little help once with books or rent, I was told that life isn't fair, and that I needed to learn independence. Yet somehow, that same rule never seemed to apply to Brandon. The clearest example of this favoritism happened a few years ago. Brandon borrowed my car without asking, took it out with his friends, and ended up crashing it into a guardrail after speeding on the highway. My car was totaled. I was devastated, not just because of the car itself, but because I had worked so hard to save for it. When I turned to my parents for support, I thought surely they would be furious with him. Instead, I was met with excuses. "He's young, Melanie. Everyone makes mistakes." They told me I should be thankful he wasn't hurt. I was the one left carless, scrambling to find rides to work, while Brandon walked away without even a scratch on his record. That was just one of many times my needs were dismissed. If Brandon needed money, he got it. If I needed support, I was told to figure it out. Over the years, those moments built up, carving out this constant reminder that in my family's eyes, Brandon could do no wrong. This is why my engagement ring meant so much. Jacob isn't like my parents. He never treated me as second best. He worked tirelessly to save up for that ring, putting aside little by little until he finally had enough. When he placed it on my finger, I didn't just see a diamond. I saw love, sacrifice, and proof that I mattered to someone in a way I never seemed to matter to my own family. So when I think about what happened later, when that ring disappeared, it wasn't just a piece of jewelry being taken away from me. It was like years of favoritism and betrayal rolled into one sharp reminder. In my parents' world, Brandon always came first, no matter the cost. The pain in my stomach had grown unbearable by the time Jacob rushed me to the emergency room. Everything after that felt like a blur of bright lights, hurried voices, and the overwhelming fear that something inside me was about to break. The doctors told me my appendix had to come out right away. I didn't have the luxury of time to think about anything beyond signing the forms and gripping Jacob's hand as they wheeled me towards surgery. Through it all, Jacob was steady. He didn't leave my side except when hospital staff forced him to step out. He sat by my bed when I drifted in and out of sleep, read updates from the doctor, and tried to keep me calm when I felt like everything was spinning out of control. Even when he looked exhausted, he still squeezed my hand and told me he wasn't going anywhere. My parents, Karen and David, visited too. They came into the hospital room with their usual mix of concern and distraction. After a few pleasantries about how I looked pale but would bounce back soon, they shifted to practical matters. My mom leaned close to my bed and said, "We'll look after your apartment and all your valuables while you're in here. You just focus on getting better." My dad nodded in agreement. At first, I hesitated. Letting them into my space always gave me a strange feeling. But in that moment, lying weak and connected to four lines, I wanted to believe they were being genuine. So I agreed. I remember thinking to myself that, surely, when I was sick and vulnerable, my parents would finally step up. If there was ever a time they could prove they cared for me as much as they did for Brandon, this was it. I told myself to trust them, and for a short while I managed to find comfort in that thought. Meanwhile, in the background, I caught little whispers from Brandon. He wasn't as concerned about me or my recovery. Instead, he kept going on about his upcoming birthday. "It's going to be huge." I overheard him bragging once, his voice carrying down the hospital hallway while he was on the phone. "Everyone will be talking about it. Best party of the year." At the time, I thought it was just typical Brandon, always chasing attention, always focused on himself. I never connected it to anything larger. As I lay in that hospital bed, the one thing I didn't worry about was my engagement ring. I had taken it off before surgery and placed it carefully in my jewelry box at home. To me, that box was like a safe, and my parents' promise to watch over my apartment made me believe everything inside it would be untouched. That ring was sacred, Jacob's years of saving, our promise for the future, a symbol of love I thought nobody would dare to take. I couldn't have imagined, even in my weakest state, that the very people I trusted to protect it would see it as something else entirely. Walking through the door of my apartment after being discharged from the hospital should have felt like relief. Instead, it was unsettling. The air inside felt different, heavy in a way I couldn't explain. It wasn't just the fact that I had been away for days. It was the little things, details that didn't add up. A throw blanket I normally kept folded on the couch was bunched up in a heap. A picture frame on the shelf had been nudged just enough that it no longer lined up with the others. Even the faint scent of a cologne that wasn't Jacob's lingered in the room. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe I was just sensitive after surgery, my body still weak, my mind picking up on things I wouldn't usually notice. Jacob carried my hospital bag into the bedroom while I slowly followed, clutching my side where the stitches still pulled. I remember telling myself, "You're just being paranoid, Melanie." But when I walked into my bedroom, that uneasy feeling only grew stronger. The top of my dresser, where I always kept a small wooden jewelry box, had faint dust marks where it looked like something had been moved around. I opened the box, half distracted, expecting to see the little collection I'd had for years. Earrings from my teenage days, a silver chain from my grandmother, and the ring. The engagement ring. But it wasn't there. My chest tightened instantly, and I fumbled through the box as if maybe it had just slipped into another corner. I even pulled everything out and laid it on the dresser, hoping the diamond would catch the light. Nothing. My ring was gone. I could feel the panic rising in my throat. My first thought was Jacob. Maybe he had taken it without telling me, maybe to clean it or get it resized as a surprise. That would explain everything, right? I tried to calm my racing heart with that thought, but I needed to hear it from Jacob. I called, trying to keep my voice steady. He came in quickly, probably worried by my tone. Did you take my ring?" "Maybe for cleaning." He looked confused. "What ring?" "My engagement ring," I said, holding up the empty jewelry box. "It's not here. Please tell me you took it." His eyes widened, and he shook his head firmly. "No, Melanie. I would never touch that without telling you. I swear." The room spun for a second as I tried to process that. If Jacob didn't take it, then who did? Later, when I visited my parents, I tried to slip the question in casually, as though it wasn't tearing me apart inside. "Hey, did you guys notice my engagement ring when you were at the apartment?" I asked, watching their faces carefully. My mom looked at my dad, then back at me, her smile just a little too forced. "Oh, your ring?" "No, sweetie, we didn't see it." My dad cleared his throat and changed the subject quickly, asking about how my stitches were healing. Their eyes avoided mine, and in that moment, I felt the first real stab of dread. Something was wrong, and they knew more than they were letting on. It was a week after I came home when the truth started to unfold. I was still moving slowly, my stitches making every step feel heavy, when my phone buzzed with a message from an old friend. She asked how I was doing after surgery and then added, almost offhand, "By the way, Brandon's party looked insane. Didn't know your family was rolling in that kind of cash." I froze. "What party?" I typed back, though I already felt my stomach nodding. Her reply came quick. "His birthday. Everyone's talking about it. He had a DJ, catered food, even showed off some new designer shoes. Thought you'd know." I sat there staring at the screen. My brother had always been dramatic, but the kind of party she was describing wasn't cheap. Not even close. I immediately thought of the empty space in my jewelry box. My heart started pounding as I scrolled social media, and sure enough, there were photos everywhere. Brandon grinning in a flashy jacket, holding bottles of champagne, posing in front of rented speakers bigger than him. Laughter, crowds, expensive decorations. It looked more like a wedding reception than a birthday. That's when it hit me. The timing. The missing ring. The nervous looks from my parents. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The answer was staring me in the face. My engagement ring, the one Jacob had poured years of hard work into, had been sold to bankroll Brandon's night of glory. The rage and disbelief coursing through me made my hands shake. I called my parents and asked if I could stop by. My voice cracked just enough to hide the storm building inside. When I walked into their house, I didn't waste any time. "Where's my ring?" I asked flatly. My mom blinked, startled. My dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Melanie, we told you, we don't know. Don't lie to me." I snapped louder than I intended. "I know about Brandon's party. I saw the pictures, the catering, the clothes. That money didn't come from nowhere. It came from my ring, didn't it?" The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, my dad sighed, rubbing his temples. My mom's voice broke the stillness. "We only did it because family comes first. Brandon deserved a proper birthday after everything he's been through." I stared at her, my throat dry. "You sold my engagement ring, the one Jacob worked years to afford. And you did it for a party. Sweetheart," my mom said gently, as if her words could soften the blow. "It's just jewelry. Jacob can buy you another one. You'll understand one day." Her words cut deeper than anything else. Just jewelry? To them, maybe. To me, it was a promise, a future, something sacred. And they had tossed it away like it meant nothing. In that moment, standing in my parents' living room, I felt something inside me crack. The betrayal wasn't just about the ring. It was about realizing my parents had never valued me the way I had hoped they did. When I got back to my apartment after that confrontation, the weight of it all finally hit me. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding the empty jewelry box in my lap, like it could somehow bring the ring back if I just stared at it long enough. My chest ached, and before I knew it, tears were spilling down my cheeks. I cried until my throat was raw, not just for the ring, but for what it meant. It wasn't about the diamond. It was about Jacob's love, his sacrifice, and the trust one thought I could place in my family. Jacob came in and sat beside me, his arm wrapping around my shoulders. His face was tense, his jaw tight in a way I didn't see often. He was furious, not at me, but at the people who were supposed to care for me. "They had no right, Melanie," he said firmly. "That ring was yours. Ours. What they did, it's beyond disrespect. It's theft." I nodded, still wiping my eyes. "They don't even see it that way," I whispered. "To them, it was just jewelry. Like it didn't matter. My mom actually told me Jacob could just buy me another one, like it was nothing." Jacob's hand clenched into a fist on his knee. "Unbelievable. They don't get it. They don't care what it represented. They don't care about you, not really, not the way they should." His anger mirrored the storm inside me, but there was another layer to my pain. The betrayal wasn't about dollars or carrots. It was about years of favoritism, about always being the one expected to give while Brandon took. It was about watching my parents bend over backward to excuse him while dismissing me over and over again. The ring was just the final proof that, in their eyes, my happiness was disposable if it meant Brandon could shine. When I called them later, hoping they might at least apologize, I was met with more blame. "You're being selfish, Melanie," my dad told me sharply. "It was one party, and you'll get over it. Don't make this bigger than it is." My mom chimed in, her voice dripping with disappointment. "You always think everything's about you. Brandon deserved to be celebrated. Can't you put family first, just once?" Their words burned, but in a strange way, they also hardened something inside me. For the first time, instead of folding under their guilt, I felt a spark of strength. Jacob saw it too. He took my hand and looked me straight in the eye. "You can't let this go, Mel. If you let them walk over you now, they'll keep doing it. You have to stand up for yourself, for us." I swallowed hard, realizing he was right. The sadness in me was slowly shifting into something else. Resolve. For once, I wasn't going to be the one who stayed quiet to keep the peace. They had crossed a line, and I wasn't going to let them pretend it didn't matter. This time, I would fight back. Jacob drove me to my parents' house a few days later. I didn't want to go alone. I knew how quickly they turned everything around on me, and this time I needed backup. The drive was quiet, heavy with the unspoken truth that this confrontation was going to change everything between me and my family. When we walked into the living room, my parents were already seated, as if they had been waiting. Brandon lounged on the couch with his phone in his hand, smirking like he already knew why I was there. My dad folded his arms. My mom plastered on that fake, patient smile she always used when she thought I was overreacting. I didn't waste time. "I want my ring back," I said firmly. "You had no right to sell it, and I want the money returned." Brandon chuckled, shaking his head. "Oh, come on, Mel. Don't be so dramatic. That party was legendary. Everyone's still talking about it. You should be proud. You basically sponsored the best night of my life." The smugness in his tone made my blood boil. Jacob stepped forward, his voice sharp. "You think stealing from your sister to throw a party is something to brag about? That ring wasn't just jewelry. It was a symbol of our future. And you threw it away for a night of booze and noise." My mom raised her hand as if to calm the room. "Enough. Brandon deserved to be celebrated. He's young, he's finding his way, and we wanted to give him that joy. Melanie, you'll understand when you stop being so stubborn. Rings can be replaced. Family can't." I stared at her in disbelief. "Replaced? Do you even hear yourself?" Jacob worked for years to buy that ring. It wasn't just a piece of metal. It meant something. And you traded it for balloons, speakers, and designer shoes. My dad leaned forward, his voice heavy with irritation. "What's done is done. The money's gone. We spent it. You can't undo it now. If Jacob really loves you, he'll just get you another ring. That's what a man does for his fiancée." Jacob's face went red with anger, but it was my voice that cracked through the air. "Do you even realize how cruel that sounds? You're asking him to fix your betrayal. You're asking me to pretend this didn't happen. But I can't." Brandon leaned back in the couch, smirking again. "Maybe next time hide your stuff better, sis. Just saying." That was the breaking point. In that single moment, with my parents defending him and Brandon mocking me, I finally understood. They were never going to change. No matter how hard I worked, no matter how much I tried to be the daughter they should have been proud of, Brandon would always come first, and I would always come second. I felt something inside me snap, not just sadness, but a final acceptance. Whatever illusion I had about my family was gone. The drive home from my parents' house was silent, but inside my head, a storm was raging. Their words replayed over and over, each one cutting deeper than the last. "If Jacob really loves you, he'll buy another ring. Family comes first. The money's gone." I realized then that trying to reason with them was pointless. They weren't going to admit they were wrong, and they certainly weren't going to change. For most of my life, I had swallowed my anger and played the role of the responsible daughter while Brandon was excused from everything. But this time, I wasn't going to let them sweep it under the rug. Something inside me shifted. I didn't just want to cry about what they'd done. I wanted to make sure they finally faced consequence. The next morning, I walked into the police station. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady as I explained everything. The ring, its value, how it legally belonged to me, and how my parents had sold it without my permission. The officer took my statement, filed a report, and assured me the matter would be investigated. For the first time, I felt like I was taking back some control. When my parents found out, they were furious. My mom called me, her voice sharp and panicked. "Melanie, how could you? You'll ruin the family's name. What will people think if this becomes public?" I didn't even flinch. "You should have thought of that before you sold something that didn't belong to you," I replied. For once, I wasn't letting their guilt trips sway me. Meanwhile, Brandon strutted around like nothing could touch him. He bragged online about the party, showing off pictures of him spraying champagne, laughing, and boasting about the epic night. I knew he worked at a company that valued professionalism, and thanks to a mutual friend who also worked there, I made sure those photos landed in the right hand. Within a week, Brandon was called into a meeting and let go. His reckless behavior wasn't something his employer wanted attached to their name. The ripple effects hit fast. Brandon was livid, storming around and blaming me for ruining his life. My parents begged me to reconsider the police report, to think of the damage I was doing to the family. But I didn't bend. For once, their pressure rolled right off me. I had spent too long being their scapegoat, the one expected to sacrifice so Brandon could thrive. Not anymore. The fractures in our family grew wider with every passing day. My parents stopped calling as often, their voices strained and clipped when they did. Brandon avoided me entirely, except for the occasional bitter message about how I had destroyed everything. But instead of guilt, I felt lighter. It wasn't just about the ring anymore. It was about reclaiming my voice, drawing a line they couldn't cross again. They had taken from me, disrespected me, and expected me to stay silent. This time, I chose to fight back. and it felt like freedom. The weeks that followed were tense in ways I had never experienced before. Once the police investigation began, the confident, dismissive tone my parents had used on me shifted into something else entirely: fear. The officers questioned them, asking for proof of where the ring had gone, what they did with the money, and why they sold something that wasn't theirs. My parents had no real answers, only excuses that sounded weaker each time they repeated them. For the first time in my life, I saw cracks in their authority. They had always acted untouchable, as though nothing they did could be challenged, but the possibility of legal consequences changed everything. Selling stolen property wasn't just a family dispute, it was a crime. I heard from relatives that my parents were panicking, worried about fines, a criminal record, and the shame of people in town finding out. Meanwhile, Brandon's life unraveled quickly. Losing his job hit him harder than he expected. He had never learned how to stand on his own 2 feet, and suddenly, there was no safety net. Without money coming in, the flashy clothes and late nights out came to an abrupt end. His friends who once cheered him on disappeared when the free parties stopped. He was left bitter, angry, and broke, blaming me for every misfortune he faced. My parents, desperate to salvage what they could, tried everything to guilt me into dropping the charges. My mom called late at night, her voice trembling as she said things like, "Melanie, you can't do this to your own family. We made a mistake, but you're making it worse." My dad tried the stern approach, accusing me of being cold-hearted. "You're tearing this family apart," he said, as though their theft hadn't already done that. But I didn't budge. I had lived my whole life bending under their guilt, giving up my needs so Brandon could get what he wanted. Not this time. They had crossed a line that couldn't be erased with apologies or excuses. Through it all, Jacob stood by me. One evening, he surprised me with a small box. Inside was a new engagement ring, not nearly as expensive as the one he had saved so long for, but simple and elegant. My breath caught as he slipped it onto my finger. "It's not the cost that matters," he said softly. "It's us. It's the promise we made." Tears welled in my eyes, not from sadness this time, but from gratitude. He was right. The love between us didn't depend on a diamond's size. Still, as I looked at the new ring, I couldn't help but feel the weight of what had been lost. My parents had taken more than a piece of jewelry. They had taken trust one could never get back. I promised myself then I would move forward with Jacob stronger than ever. But I would never forget what my parents had done. Some betrayals carve scars too deep to heal, and this was one of them. I made my decision quietly but firmly. No more calls, no more visits, no more second chances. Cutting ties with my parents and Brandon wasn't something I ever imagined doing, but after everything, it was the only way forward. For the first time in my life, I stopped waiting for them to change, stopped hoping they would suddenly see me as worthy of the same love and respect they had always showered on Brandon. The silence that followed was strange at first, but also freeing. I no longer had to brace myself for their criticism, their guilt trips, or their endless excuses. In the quiet, I had time to think. Betrayal, I realized, doesn't always come from enemies or strangers. It often comes from the people you trust most. That's what makes it cut so deep. I had trusted my parents to protect something precious, and instead, they had stolen it from me without a second thought. They didn't just sell a ring, they sold my trust. Coming to terms with that truth was painful, but it also gave me clarity. Jacob and I leaned on each other through the storm. He never once made me feel ashamed or foolish for trusting them, and he never let me doubt his commitment to us. Slowly, we began to rebuild. Our apartment felt like a sanctuary again, a place where I could laugh without fear of someone mocking me, where I could rest without worrying who might take advantage while my back was turned. Jacob talked often about the future, our wedding, a home we'd one day share, the life we were building piece by piece. His faith in us helped me believe again, not in my family, but in the power of choosing my own path. There were nights when the ache of loss still crept in. Family dinners, holidays, birthdays, those moments reminded me of what I had let go. But then I would remind myself of what staying would have cost me, my peace, my dignity, my self-respect. The truth is, losing my family hurt, but losing myself would have been far worse. Looking back now, I don't see the empty space where they used to be. I see the room it left for something healthier, stronger, and more honest. I see the chance to build traditions of my own, rooted in love that is given freely, not measured by favoritism or manipulation. When I slipped the ring Jacob gave me onto my finger each morning, it isn't just a symbol of our engagement. It's a reminder that real love isn't something you buy or steal. It's something you earn every single day by showing up with respect and loyalty. And so, even with the scars of betrayal, I've chosen to move forward. My story doesn't end with loss. It begins with freedom. And though I lost my parents and brother along the way, I gained something much more valuable: the strength to protect my own worth, no matter the cost. Do you believe Melanie made the right choice by cutting ties with her parents and brother, or should she have given them another chance? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd really like to hear your perspective. And if stories like this resonate with you, make sure to hit subscribe and tap the notification bell so you're always updated with the next one.